Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Bobble Pod. However, with this episode, we're actually in a different location. This will be our first ever episode recorded in Dubai. And coming as part of this season and coming in future episodes, you're going to see hopefully a few more different location podcasts, as I'll say, or Dubai-based podcasts in the upcoming series in terms of what we're recording. But before I begin, as always, don't forget to like, follow and subscribe our podcast if you're new and you're just listening for the first time. For anyone on YouTube, hi YouTube, don't forget to subscribe, click on the bell notification button to get updated on our weekly episodes that come out every Tuesday. So, in this episode, in the great city here in Dubai, I'm going to talk about scaling your digital marketing efforts. And this came about from a lot of feedback we've had from previous episodes, people getting in contact with us, information you as listeners and subscribers want to hear back from us. So this episode has come about because of you, our subscribers. So first thing we're going to start with is understanding what is scaling. What do we mean by scaling? Now there's two elements to scaling, the way I see it. And there's scaling your business, which is the primary element of scaling when we discuss that. So that is taking your business that's already gone from A to B, from B to C, D, E, F. Now, most people scale businesses because they're building to grow, so they're looking for acquisition, or they're scaling for further investment to continue on their next element of scaling or development or business growth journey that they're on. However, as part of that scaling element, you've got to scale your business marketing as well. So that's the second part of scaling, is your marketing scaling, your digital marketing scaling. Because once you have your business strategy and business plan in place, you need to have a marketing strategy and execution in place to support that scaling. Because if you're a business turning over, 6 figures and you want to start turning over 7 figures a year, you're going to have to invest into acquiring new customers or promoting certain services or products to achieve that extra revenue, to achieve that extra growth as a business. So it has to go hand in hand. Your objectives set at the scaling element of your business will have to support any marketing objectives you have to set and put in place to achieve those business objectives. That's what I mean, both go hand in hand. So there's 5 elements of scaling that you need to focus on when it comes specifically to digital marketing. Now, digital marketing obviously is a subset of the wider marketing. So if you're a business, your marketing might not just include digital. You might be scaling with TV, traditional press, outdoor, direct, etc. There are different methods of marketing, but I'm going to talk specifically from a digital perspective. So if you're an e-commerce company, you're a B2B lead generation, or you could be direct to consumer in terms of services that you sell, and part of your scaling needs to involve scaling your digital marketing efforts, then these are the 5 things that I'm going to go through in today's episode. And that's going to be data analysis, understanding your audience, the message, A/B testing, and then budgeting. So they're the 5 key things. So starting with data analysis. So it's probably most of the fundamental, it's probably the key elements of the 5 steps of you need to really focus on. Looking at basically what is working and what's not working. Your data analysis is fundamental. Tools like Google Analytics, looking at if you're an e-commerce store, looking at your Shopify numbers, looking at your WooCommerce numbers, looking at your best-selling products against your worst-selling products, looking at your profit margins, looking at how much budget or how much marketing spend you achieve to achieve all those sales and acquisitions of customers. The data that you look at is very, very important because you'll understand what's working in order to allow you to scale. So if you know that certain channels, so your data will show whether it's Google, whether it's Facebook, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's TikTok, doesn't matter what the digital channel is. Your data analysis has to look at all these individual channels, all these individual platforms, understand what's working, what's not working, and where the scaling opportunities from a digital marketing perspective is key. Because with that, you can start to forecast. So if you have, and we go back to talking about scaling in terms of your business, you will have a plan and strategy in place. So you'll say, right now we're achieving $500,000 in turnover, but our scaling is to get to 1.5 to 2 million turnover. And we know that from $500,000, the data shows that these 10 products are our best selling products and the margin is good, but there's an opportunity to sell more of these. And because of these products, we're going to launch X amount of products based on demand and growth and sub-products or services that our customers demand, but we need to go out to new customers to achieve that. So that data helps you forecast, so you know that actually right now I'm achieving a £20-30 cost per sale or acquisition of a new customer, or you're achieving a £50-60 cost per lead. Now remember, just because that's what you're achieving now on your current budgets and spend, when you're forecasting, you've got to look at, right, there's going to be an increase in spend, extra amount of impressions, an extra amount of clicks, or potentially increase in click-through rates, but a drop-off in conversion rate, because there's going to be a learning period. But so that forecasting has to be a bit more realistic. Just because you achieved a £40 or £30 cost per sale, cost per lead at $500,000 revenue, doesn't mean that's going to stay static as you scale up. It will change. So that's why looking at data is key, because it helps you forecast in terms of what margins are good. So you need to know that our average cost per lead is £40. You know, the lowest we've achieved is £32, but the highest for it to remain profitable, we can let it go to is around about £55 before it starts impacting margins too much. So you've got to have that forecasting scalability in place. So that helps you understand what forecasting needs to do, so where your budget and how much you need to do, understand what channels you need to focus your attention on when it comes to digital marketing. So data analysis is everything. Look at the data available to you, understand what's working, what's not working. Then, because you're scaling, you have a set amount of existing customers. The next element to focus on is understanding your audience, because you have to scale. So if part of your growth strategy as a business, whether you're e-commerce or B2B, is to launch new products or to acquire new customers, you need to really understand who your existing customers are, but also any potential new customers. So if you're launching a new service and you're B2B, then you might need a new audience to go after. So you need to really profile that audience. Who they are, what's the job title, what's the industry in which they're going to be based in, are the decision makers, what are they, what is their level of decision making in that business, are they managers, are they not managers, what's the potential wage income, to elements like that, where would they be based geographically, potential gender and age elements as well. So you have to consider all these different elements of a demographic element of an audience, but also then you're going to look at the behaviorals. Where do they spend their time? What is their online media consumption and behavior? Essentially, where do they spend their time when they're not in work? Is it on LinkedIn during work? Are they on laptop? Are they on tablet? Are they on mobile devices? Really understand your audience, because it is the same, but it can also be different at the exact same time. So if you have an audience and you're looking to say, well, actually, there's a whole bigger sector of this audience that we haven't reached out to, because we're turning over $500,000, which will allow us to get to 1.5 million, which means you need to increase your digital marketing scale and growth and attract those new potential market of that audience. But remember that it could be a new audience, so you need to really think about who it is. So, and you don't want to get that wrong, because if you're not adapting to your audience, you'll fail within that process. So most and commonly, you're generally targeting the same audience, but if it is different, you need to make sure that you know who that different audience is as part of scaling new product launches or different services that you're offering to different businesses, and how does that impact your scaling and how you're targeting. Because if you're targeting the wrong audience, you're just basically wasting money to that audience as you're scaling, and you're going to be thinking, well, why are we not scaling? We're spending all this money on digital marketing, we know the channels are right, but it's not working because you're targeting the wrong audience for that particular product or service. The third one is message. I talk about message and the importance of it when I talk about the 3 pillars of paid social or paid media. So if you've ever watched the episode of the 3 pillars of paid social, you understand why message is probably one of the most important elements of that pillar. And it's the same with scaling, because your message is going to define what follows on from the previous point, who you're targeting, essentially. So if your audience is the same, then you need to adapt your message to more of a mass market audience, or to attract other customers, in terms of making sure there's not enough high frequency, so the same customers aren't seeing it again and again and again. But if it's a new audience, you need to adapt your message to that new audience. You've got to hit their pain points, understand the unique selling points of this new product, this new service, in terms of what you need to offer. So considering that, who you target and what message do you want them to receive, think about your current message, think about your website, think about the ads, the text ads, the videos, the graphics, the physical marketing, your communication processes internally and externally. All these elements matter, because If it's Google Ads, for example, that's the best performing platform based on the data analysis you've done, and it's a different audience, then you need to change the headlines and descriptions. And remember, with Google Ads, you've got responsive search ads. In responsive search ads, you need 15 headlines and 4 descriptions. So that's a lot of messaging you need to consider. Plus, you've got performance max campaigns, you might do YouTube, you might do LinkedIn by video. There's a lot of platforms that you might use that will use different types of, ad formats and creative messaging, from images to text to video. So you need to really adapt your message to work within those constraints and keep it consistent as well all the way through. But remember, it's more than just text ads and videos and graphics. There's physical marketing in terms of how you update yourself. It could be part of a rebrand you're doing in terms of, as you're scaling up, you realise that the old messaging and the tone of voice isn't good enough, so you need to improve your tone of voice. So continue focusing on those elements. Identify, the channel that's working well, the audience you're targeted to, which leads directly to message in terms of what message you want to communicate and get over. If we'd take this podcast, for example, our goal is always to educate. So the message for us at the start and the end is just to subscribe, because the more subscribers we have, the more people are following us, the more people we feel we are educating in the digital marketing field. Simple as that. As an agency, when it comes to my services, for example, I will separate them out by different services. So I will target PPC services to specific, performance-based marketing directors, and SEO to more content, more different types of internal marketing managers differently. Sometimes it's the same marketing director, because that generally tends to make sense, but the messaging in terms of what I push out for SEO is different. For example, I'll say, we rank position 1 for PPC agency leads in terms of on Google for our services. Do you rank position 1 if you were to type in 2-4 keywords onto Google for your services? Would you appear on the top of Google? That kind of messaging and how it's delivered is different to how we promote PPC, completely differently. So it's how you want, like I said, your audience to perceive that message, that point of view. That's going to be very, very, very important. So we've got data analysis, we've got understanding your audience, we've got the message, which might seem very simplistic and like, well, essentially, in terms of what's going on. But then there's also element 4, which is A/B testing. Remember, as you're scaling your business, as you're scaling your digital marketing efforts, not everything is going to work. Having a strategy in place, which comes from when you're scaling your business, putting a plan in place, having a marketing strategy and a digital marketing strategy in place to support that business strategy for scaling, and planning everything. You could plan everything to a T and think that it's all going to work, but it still might not work because something could be wrong. You could have you could have not done the data analysis right, so you might have perceived one channel to be better than another. So essentially focus too much effort into one channel where actually your focus should have been on not just one, but potentially 2 or 3. You might have misaligned your audience with those channels. You might have got the messaging wrong with those channels, but that's why A/B testing is everything. So remember, not everything you're going to do is going to work, but it's important to have a couple of ideas in place. Just because you think you might have the right message or the right channel or the right audience, adapt that audience and targeting within those channels. So if you know, for example, Meta and Facebook is the best platform for you and your audience, let's take that as an example, and you know that it's an existing audience that you're trying to target, or it's a potential new audience. Let's take a new audience as an example for this one. So it's a new audience you're targeting. You've got that new audience, you'll build it out within the Meta ad campaign and account, but also create a separate audience. Look at what you've included in that audience and adapt it slightly. Maybe even create a third audience where you've looked at what you think the audience is, but then broken it down into 2 or 3 sub-audience segments in terms of being a bit more narrow, a bit more specific to identify if that is correct or not. Then you've got 4 campaigns to build out on. That's A/B testing from an audience perspective. So that way you're not putting all your eggs into one basket, so to speak. Then when it comes to messaging and creative, do the same thing. A/B test your ads and creative to that audience too. Don't just have the same ad across each audience. That's where analysing your data as you're scaling up is going to be really, really, really key, because you might see one audience might react better to, let's say, a image-based or graphic-based ad and the text ad, but one audience might respond better to video creative. overall. But you might have two different kind of video creatives, one with a different call to action and one with a more softer call to action, for example. One might get a better click-through rate, one might get a better conversion rate. So A/B testing different audiences and different ads and creatives and graphics and messaging will help you understand which one. So if you see a creative doing really well in one audience, you can then implement that ad across Meta or Facebook into the other audience to test and implement it and add it in and roll it as part of that campaign to see if it's working. That's what we mean by A/B testing, is understand the difference. You might want to test beyond that different landing pages or different products or services that you want to push out or different contact forms as well, because you might feel like actually this contact form is too long if it's B2B, or this one's shorter, so one might get more completions than the other. But then you're going to have to look at the internal data to see, well, actually, does a short form work better in terms of conversion rate from lead to actual acquisition of a customer compared to the long form content? You might have one product that has, more reviews on or more video content about that product category compared to one that doesn't, and see if that works better. So again, A/B testing isn't just, we'll try this message, that message. It's like, no, A/B test different channels in terms of digital channels, A/B test the different audiences and campaign objectives within those channels, A/B test the messaging, the ads, the creative, everything in terms of what you're going to communicate, the call to actions within that, and A/B test the content on your website in terms of where you're driving that traffic, that audience to. And then analyze what's working and what's not working, again going back to point one, and really taking it from there. The final element is budget. So you can't scale if your budget doesn't match the objectives that you've set. So if you're scaling from $500,000 to 1.5 million, then you need to have a budget in place to do that. So if you're achieving £500,000 in sales, but your marketing budget is, let's say, £50,000, so that's a 10 ROAS, then for you to achieve 1.5 to 2 million, your budget's going to have to be north of 150, but potentially south of 200,000. So that's simple maths of like, all right, for every $500,000, you need to spend £50,000 to achieve. To achieve 100,000, so to achieve a million, you're going to have to spend 100,000, achieve 1.5 million, 150,000. But remember, as I mentioned earlier, is that as you're looking at your data and you're doing forecasting, your cost per acquisition is going to go up, it will scale up. So if you have a graph, let's say this is how you're doing, as you scale, your cost per acquisition will go up. And then as you've got enough data analysis to refine what's working, you've got the right messaging, audience, A/B testing, you'll start seeing that cost per acquisition come down and steady again and flatline. So you see almost like an increase and almost like a hill movement. That's natural and that's what you want to see. But during that hump, your budget's going to be a lot extra to allow for what's not working. Remember, not everything's going to work. To allow A/B testing, understand the different channels, really test it. So to allow you to really expand and scale. Budgeting is everything. Sometimes we get, and this is why I stress it, because clients come to us and say, well, we're doing really well now. We're spending £10,000 a month on Google Ads, and we're hitting £100,000 in sales, but we want to, do 250,000 within 6 months. At which point I'll say, well, how much budget do you have in place to go from £100,000 a month in sales to £250,000 a month in sales? And I guarantee you they'll say, well, I only want to spend another £5,000. Well, that's not realistic. You're asking to increase your actual revenue by 150%, but only increase your marketing spend by 50%. It doesn't work out as a ratio, does it? So make sure that you have enough budget in place. But that comes from step one, by doing your data analysis, understanding where to place that budget. And if you're really smart, what you should do is create a media plan. So if you're going to scale, and as part of any marketing strategy and objectives, is you should have a budget section within that digital marketing strategy and objectives to say, right, this is the extra budget to achieve that, because you've done your forecast and you've done your data analysis. You know that in order for you to triple your sales, you're going to have to spend another £150,000 in marketing over the next 6 months to achieve that. By spending £150,000, you're going to bring another £1 million in sales. So there's the math. So you've got to break that £150,000 down into, well, which channels are we going to do, and why are you going to put 50,000 into Meta over Google, for example. That's where the justification, the data analysis comes in place. By doing a media plan, you can say, right, this is the channel, So it could be social media. These are the platforms within social media, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, whatever it is that we're going to use. What is the strategy and what is the audience? And remember, allow budget for creative assets. It's not just money that's going into platform, it's money that has to go into updating the website, improving the website to allow for extra traffic to the website, because if you can increase your traffic by threefold, then your website want to make sure it's good from an SEO point of view, it's good from a usability point of view, you want to make sure the landing page experience is good, you want to make sure that it's relevant from a keyword analysis. All these elements you have to consider, but that comes from budget, knowing that not just budget into media, but budget into your website, into your creative as well. So remember, at the start your cost will be high for return, but the further data and performance comes through, this will improve. So there's the 5 key things you should focus on when scaling your digital marketing. Data analysis, understanding your audience, message you deliver to that audience, A/B test, because everything you do from the start isn't going to work. You'll have to, it's almost understanding what doesn't work to understand what does work, failure for success, and then budget. If you don't have realistic budgets in place, you're not going to hit your scaling and business targets overall. Now, just a few updates on this podcast. So we are into a new series. We're not going to do an episode format anymore. It's just going to be topics and different type of guests. We've got a number of guests lined up coming up, and after we finish shooting a couple of podcasts in Dubai, you'll see our location change and a new podcast recording studio. So those watching on YouTube will see something better than just our old offices in the background, the lights turning on and off. Don't forget to subscribe, follow on any podcast streaming platforms. If you're on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe, click the bell notification for updates on what's coming on. That's been an episode on scaling your digital marketing efforts on this podcast, and I look forward to catching you on my next podcast with our guest, John James. Thank you for listening.